"Vasilisa!" my mother shouted loudly and grudgingly. "Do you even know what time it is? Get up. You'll be late for school." The girl barely opened her eyes to the level of thin slits, reminding herself of V, from the story of the same name by Gogol. Well, at least, she wouldn't mind if someone helped her raise her eyelids to see the world. Vasilisa lay in a cozy bed for a few more seconds, trying to come to terms with the idea that the weekend had passed, and they had been replaced by a dull Monday morning. Then the girl got herself out of bed after all. Stepping into soft slippers with rabbit ears, the girl went to the spacious bathroom to start the day with the usual procedures. And no, Vasilisa didn't make do with water and a toothbrush like the vast majority of girls her age. Schoolgirl started her day with face tonic and massage gua sha, did not forget to moisturize and nourish her skin, apply oil to the lips. In general, Vasilisa had enough to do. Her mother, Polina Alexandrovna, went back into Vasilisa's bedroom to check on her daughter. The girl was sitting in front of the dressing table, putting the finishing touches on her makeup. "Vasilisa, can you stop putting on beauty?" The woman shook her head, long accustomed to her daughter's behavior. "You won't have time for breakfast." "I'd rather be hungry than unpainted," cheerfully responded daughter, "especially since today I defend the project in front of the whole class. I'm not going to stand in front of them like a scarecrow." Vasilisa really put the maintenance of her appearance on top of life's priorities. Of course, Vasilisa was lucky. She, so to speak, won the gene lottery. By nature, Lyubimova had beautiful features, thick dark hair, blue eyes with a black outline, a slender figure, and also, an outstanding mind. Not a girl, a dream. However, Vasilisa was not going to enjoy the gifts of fate, so she watched her day and night, not allowing even a pimple to appear on her chin. Lyubimova was determined to keep her status as the main beauty of the school, the more so, the graduation is not far off. Then the girl planned to try on the same role at university. Lyubimova studied in 11th grade in a private lyceum, named, as it seemed to her, not very creative, in honor of the Greek philosopher and polymath, Aristotle. The creators didn't even bother to play with cognate words, simply adding the philosopher's name to the building's plaque. The Lyceum Aristotle had a special fame, because really bright minds graduated from its walls. Among them were future doctors, scientists, politicians, artists, lawyers, leaders of different ranks. To achieve this, students were taught by the best teachers, sometimes even guest lecturers from universities taught the lessons. The students had at their disposal laboratories with modern equipment. Among the schedule one could see yoga classes, a swimming pool, and several foreign languages. Education there was not cheap, but Vasilisa's parents could afford it. Lyubimov Nikolai, Vasilisa's father, was a successful entrepreneur. He started his business by distributing dietary supplements and various health teas, and then decided to create similar products under his own name. Thus was founded a firm for the production of natural dietary supplements and cosmetics panacea. Thanks to skillful marketers, business immediately went uphill. People willingly believed that a couple of pills would cure them of all diseases, make them smart, beautiful and thin, help fractures heal, and, perhaps, would allow to move objects with the power of thought and levitate. That's why beautiful jars with eye-catching packages were bought up as soon as they appeared on the shelves or in online catalogs. So Nikolai Lyubimov was able to literally turn the pills into gold, providing his family with a luxurious life. Now his wife was dressed in branded outfits, which she could buy directly in France or Italy or England, and his daughter was graduating from a prestigious school and was planning to enter a university in the capital. Lyubimova entered the classroom last, when all her classmates were already assembled. High heels accompanied her every step with a resonant clatter, giving her gait a special melody. The girl immediately noticed her classmates, and several girls swarmed around Vaska, as soon as she took her place at the first desk. Vasu, red-haired and Yuda, a creative person, immediately stretched out. "You look amazing." The girl did not really believe in the sincerity of such compliments. She was well aware that her classmates envied her, not white envy. However, she treated Anya well, so she smiled warmly at her, thanking her. "Vasilisa, why aren't you in uniform?" "Today is Monday," Yulika Stavrogin asked, looking at her classmate's outfit with poorly concealed envy. Lyceum students wore the same uniform 4 days a week, and the free day was on Friday. However, Lyubimova decided to ignore this rule, feeling the urgent need to look 100% and stand out from the gray masses. Vasilisa's image was carefully thought out, down to accessories in the form of massive rings. The girl was proud of every detail, and now defiantly brushed off the invisible dust from her graphite-colored jacket. "This jacket cost me a fortune, just illegal to keep it in the closet as lunch for moths. Don't you think so?" Vasia grinned, quite pleased with herself and the furor that her image made on her classmates. "And in general, constantly walking around in uniform, as if we came out of the same incubator, negatively affects my mental health. Who knows? Maybe a psychologist can get such a certificate, like a ban on school uniforms for health reasons." The girls laughed, vividly supporting this idea. There was a bell for class, and with it the algebra teacher sailed into the classroom. She quickly looked around, stopping at Lyubimova. "Vasilisa, what happened to your appearance?" Immediately jumped at the student a woman, zealously monitoring discipline. "You won't believe it, Olga Ivanovna." Vasia started in a tragic voice. "I got a huge stain on my skirt at breakfast, and I am taking the pants and the spare skirt from the cleaners today. They say it's true that Monday is a hard day. I myself was terribly upset. At least I was not late for your lesson." While I was changing, mathematician for a few moments glared at the honest face of her student, and then waved her hand. The lesson went on as usual. Kostya was called to the blackboard, who was just wasting his parents' money on the Lyceum and did not want to study. When the teacher realized that Kostya would be useless, they invited Vovk Sobolev, a genius from the world of mathematics and all exact sciences, to help. The guy was very smart, and also kind-hearted, but, in Vasilisa's opinion, it is unlikely to save him. Vovka was fat, with bright red cheeks, as if someone pinched him for them, and also wore glasses, as if he did not know about the existence of contact lenses. Even now, Vasia watched Mr. Donut from the first desk, propping her fist on his cheek, and did not understand how he could let himself go like that. Did he take the phrase about the granite of science literally, and ate it, along with the knowledge? No matter what people say, never drink water from the face, but the fact remains, first you will be judged by your appearance, and only then by the other qualities. After all, no matter how you look at it, no one will like you for your knowledge of formulas. Vovka transferred to them late, in 10th grade. He and his family had moved from another city and were, apparently, rich, since they immediately assigned the child to a lyceum. Vasilisa did not pay much attention to him, but Vova often helped the school queen, either with a physics lab or by carrying things. However, he did the same as other suitors or sycophants. Lyubimova, once again the mathematics teacher addressed the girl, leading her out of her own thoughts. "Will you condescend to us?" "I'm sorry, I got distracted." The girl straightened her back immediately. "So what's the answer?" She nodded at the blackboard, standing in front of the schoolgirl's desk. Vasia looked at the board at a loss, beside which still loomed a dull ghost caustic and stood with a fragment of chalk. Vova, noticing her confusion, Vladimir, glancing at the teacher's back, quickly wrote the answer on the board, making sure Lyubimova read it. The boy erased it with his palm. "Nothing, 1700ths." The girl quickly reported, not doubting in the least the correctness of the answer. Olga Ivanovna's glance faded with a flicker of gloat. She nodded slowly, having seated everybody in their seats. The woman continued the lesson. A month had passed since that incident. 14th February was on the calendar, Valentine's Day, which fell on a Friday. Officially it was not celebrated in the Lyceum, and there was no box for Valentine's cards, as in usual schools. But the girls were especially pretty on this day anyway, although, whoever you ask, everyone claimed that this holiday is stupid and generally not ours, not domestic. Others called Valentine's Day a conspiracy by marketeers, who cared about selling more flowers, chocolates, and teddy bears. However, despite such demonstrative grumbling, schoolgirls still put on pretty dresses, put on pink lip gloss, and doused themselves with sweet perfume, hoping to get a gift from the one. Vasilisa's morning began with the fact that on her desk was a bouquet of scarlet roses on long stems. Attached to the bouquet was a postcard with a cryptic message, "Vasilisa beautiful from a secret admirer." Luxury flowers, Anya admired, banal. Of course. Vasia shrugged her shoulders. It seems that men do not know any other flowers except roses, but the gesture is still nice. In spite of the words, Vasia's cheeks blushed at such a sign of attention. She hoped that behind the identity of the secret admirer was Eric from the parallel class. He was the captain of the soccer team, the son of the coach of the city team, and one of the most attractive guys in high school. He had paid attention to Vasilisa before, but their relationship never got beyond the mutual compliments. During the day Lyubimova received a couple more cards and gifts, the senders of which introduced themselves or preferred to remain incognito. Among them was Eric, who gave her a teddy bear. As it turned out, he had never even heard of flowers. When the weekend passed, and Vasia entered the classroom, all classmates gallivanted. On her desk again was a bouquet of flowers, this time, daisies. The note from the mysterious suitor asked, "Are these the flowers you like better?" The girl bit her lip, blushing thickly. So, the flowers were sent by someone in class, or the ubiquitous classmates had passed on to the suitor her words about roses. Now, you can't trust anyone. Vasia looked around at the boys in her class, but found none of them who could give her flowers. And the admirer did not stop, periodically spoiling the girl with a beautiful bouquet. Each time it was a new flower, delicate pink peonies, cloud-like gypsophila, white lilies. Vasilisa was fascinated by this attitude, especially the atmosphere of mystery that kept her mysterious beau. Before going to sleep, she often wondered who it could be. A dreamy smile played on her lips as she pictured this or that guy as an admirer. The list even included a couple of younger boys, from the 10th grade, as well as a young gym teacher who was incredibly good-looking. But the truth surprised Vasia more than she could have guessed. The intrigue lasted until the girl's birthday. On that festive day, Vasilisa received another bouquet, and with them a cherished message in an envelope from an admirer. With trembling hands she opened it, ran her eyes over it, touched the signature and stumbled. Her face paled, so pale that even rouge could not save the situation. Everything she had imagined for herself was shattered. "Well, what is it?" the classmates asked impatiently. "Who gave you flowers?" They were leaning on Vasia. "Did he sign?" The girl somehow felt deceived, even insulted. After all this time she had dreamed about Vovka Sobolev! About that chubby hamster! Despite the fact that the girl had always treated Sobolev loyally, here she boiled over, coughing. The girl stood in front of the class, and, like an entertainer before the show, proclaimed, "You won't believe who's been my stalker all this time." The girl easily changed the word admirer to stalker, as if it were. At that moment, Vova Sobolev walked into the classroom. Today he was dressed in a particularly neat way, dark brown hair stylishly styled. The guy did not even wear glasses. His eyes were brown, warm as cocoa. He, seeing Vasilisa, smiled at her modestly. Vasilisa blinked, for a second losing her conceit, but then blushed thickly. "Look, he's smiling, and how dare he decide that he could be with her!" You're just in time, Vovchik. She nodded. "I'm just here to entertain our classmates with an amusing read." The girl, in front of a confused and embarrassed Sobolev, opened the letter that the boy wrote her. A letter in which he put his most intimate and sincere feelings. A letter for his first love. "When I first went to this lyceum, it was hard for me." Vasia began to read the letter in a well-positioned voice. "I was heartbroken." Wow, how pathetic. "So, next, but you, Vasilisa, made me cheer up. You're like a ray of light in." Classmates whispered, chuckled, commented especially interesting moments. "I love you, Vasilisa, with all my heart. You are the most beautiful thing that has happened to me in many years. With love, Vladimir Sobolev." After reading to the point, Lyubimova lifted her eyes from the sheet, crumpling it in her fingers. She looked directly into Vova's face. In the classroom, after a lingering pause, there was laughter and even whistling. "That's Sobol!" The classmates yelled. "What a twist!" Lyubimova looked at Vova, expecting him to somehow justify himself, but the boy was silent, and then she could not stand it. Seriously, Vova, did you decide that you could take it all out on me, as if I were your personal diary? The girl snorted haughtily. And what were you hoping for? That I'd be so thrilled with all the brooms you gave me that I'd become your girlfriend? You see, I just hate people who can't tidy themselves up. I'm annoyed by my own slovenliness and laziness. You're a guy, Vova. Have you seen yourself in the mirror? Exclamation mark. How could you even imagine yourself next to me? What nonsense. The girl spat out the words harshly, fiercely. She threw the letter into the trash. What were you thinking? She threw angrily in the direction of the guy. Returning to her seat, Vova, passing by the first desk, answered Vasia softly, so that over the roar and laughter of classmates, his quiet words reached only her ears. I thought, Vasilisa, that you are beautiful not only in appearance but also in soul, said the boy, walking away to his desk. It is true to say that first love hurts and brings much grief. For Vova Sobolev, this teenage feeling turned into a nightmare. Classmates laughed at him and teased him until the end of the school year. So, Sobolev, when are you going to marry Vasia? Anton giggled. Send you an invitation to the wedding, parried Vladimir, nothing to give away his embarrassment and resentment. Then don't forget me, too. Maria didn't fall behind. I'll invite the whole class, he promised. Sable, I wish I had your self-confidence. Shook his head. Slavic, confess in love Vasilisa, that's what should have thought? Exclamation mark. I did not think. I acted as I felt, answered the guy, adjusting his glasses on his nose. You're such a smart guy, Vova, you know computer science like Bill Gates, but you were dumb in real life. Dimka was teasing his classmate. You found someone to pick up balls with. Lubimova, why didn't you write a letter to Mario Robbie right away? Exclamation mark. Or at least our chemist. She's a good one, too. I don't like old ladies. Vovka shrugged off yet another sissy. Since then, Lubimova had been conspicuously ignoring him. Sobolev became a ghost to the girl, a kind of phantom of the Lyceum. She looked past him, but did not hold back a smile if classmates threw at the guy another barbed joke. The news about the boy in love spread through the school like wildfire. Soon absolutely everyone, from the first graders to the principal, knew about the boy's rejected feelings. The kids were cruel. Some just wanted to get off in front of such a stylish, chic, and popular Lubimova. Others didn't even need an excuse to make fun of the fat blonde. In general, the last days of the Lyceum for a hapless Romeo turned into a nightmare. Even if he firmly endured all the taunts and tried not to show how his comments hurt the students. Vladimir Sobolev did not even come to the prom. Lubimova at the graduation party shone brightest of all, in a beautiful pink dress, sewn especially for her, with a big smile on her face. She looked great. The girl anticipated that from now on her adult life would begin. And, of course, it would be filled with wonderful events, new acquaintances and impressions. After all, the whole world was at the feet of the rich and beautiful Vasilisa. But the graduate was mistaken. Her graduation was almost the last happy and carefree day in the succession of black stripes that awaited her ahead. The doorbell rang at the Lubimovs' house. Vasia, who was home alone, tore herself away from her interesting book and ran to open it. She was not expecting guests, but perhaps the delivery service had brought one of her many orders. The girl was almost right. A courier was standing on the doorstep, but the package was not one of the girl's purchases. Does Vasilisa Lubimova live here? The boy asked cheerfully, checking the notebook. Yes, that's me. Yes, that's me. She smiled back at him. Fine, then sign. He gave her a pen and a letterhead. You have a package from a secret admirer. Vasia was tense at first at the mention of a secret admirer, but immediately pulled herself together. With the same cute, years-trained smile, the girl signed her name in the right place. The courier handed her a huge, but not particularly heavy box with a red bow. After saying goodbye, the guy quickly left to place other orders. Vasia somehow closed the door behind the courier, brought the bulky box into the room and set it on the bed. Intrigued, she wanted to print her parcel immediately, but her fingers froze on the long bow ties. The girl saw that one of the ribbons had a note attached to it. When Vasilisa took it and read the message, she turned pale. Are these the flowers you like better, Vasilisa the beautiful? Beloved's fingers trembled as she realized who might have sent that box. Well, Either this is a bad joke, or Vovka didn't understand anything at all. The irritated girl tugged at the ribbon and then jerked the lid of the box off. She involuntarily let out a convulsive exhale as she looked inside and saw the contents. There were flowers, indeed, only it was a heart-shaped morning wreath of artificial red roses and white lilies. The ribbon stretched between the flowers was with her name. Lyubimova recoiled from the box, not wanting to see the monstrous wreath again. She shook, whether from anger or from resentment and fear, but no sooner had she sorted out her emotions than there was a knock at the front door. The knock was sharp, decisive, and already frightened the girl shook her whole body. She went to the front door, hoping it was her mother returning, but then she stopped. The knock was repeated. It was impatient, anxious. Bang, bang, bang. It sounded with renewed force. Vasia began to shake like an aspen leaf in the wind. She did not know, but she felt in her heart that nothing good could come out of the door. Bang, bang, bang. The insolent guest knocked even louder, and so, as if he was beating a shot already with his foot, wishing to carry the door. And then, "Vasilisa," Vladimir said in a chant, "Open, open." The girl had gathered air in her throat to scream, to tell him to get out of here. She should have said she would call the police if he didn't leave, but she couldn't make a sound. As much as she opened her mouth, it was in vain. "Vasenka," shouted Sobolev, "open up, I will not eat you." "Vasia, tell me, why are you doing this to me? I have always been kind to you." Lyubimova began to cry, while the door kept shaking from other people's blows. And then, when Lyubimova thought her head would explode from the sound of a fist hitting the door, Vasilisa opened her eyes. She was in her bed, and Vovka and the wreath were just a terrible dream. Going into the bathroom, she generously splashed ice-cold water in her face to come to her senses. The dream had exhausted her so much that she didn't even have the energy to fix her face. The girl glanced irritably at her reflection, studying the barely visible bruises under her eyes. "There, that's Sobolev again," she grumbled, blaming her condition on the poor guy, whom she herself had offended. Vasia did not understand why she was dreaming about him now. It had been a month since her graduation. She had not seen him all that time, and she had forgotten to think about the chubby boyfriend. Is that her subconscious is still trying to reach her conscience? She wanted to make the girl apologize for his vile act. Only Vasilisa was too proud and arrogant to apologize to some guy. And what was her fault? She did not ask him to fall in love with her. And since he was so screwed up, let him know that love can hurt. Turning off the water and blotting her face with paper towels, the girl lazily dragged herself into the kitchen. She'd skipped dinner the night before and was too hungry to eat. She cooked herself a healthy breakfast of oatmeal with fruit and nuts, and sat down at the table. At the same time Vasia checked incoming messages, ignoring uninteresting ones, and scrolled through the news. Her mother came into the kitchen, immediately making her usual route to the coffee machine. Polina Lyubimova could not start the day without a cup of coffee, and her housemates did not like to see her until this moment, because her mood was extremely unstable at such times. It was very easy to fall under the hot hand of the sleep-deprived landlady. "Vasilisa, we need to talk to you," suddenly Polina Alexandrovna said, with the noise of a working coffee machine. The girl looked up from the phone, catching the strained notes in her mother's voice. The aroma of freshly ground coffee beans spread smoothly through the kitchen. "I'd prefer if you took a couple of sips of coffee first, because your tone is too frightening," her daughter joked, putting the phone aside. She hadn't finished her interview with her idol, but the answer to what shampoo he washes his hair with would have to wait some time. The girl's mother really looked nervous. "Mom, seriously, what's wrong?" Vasia frowned harder, anticipating trouble, only she could not understand what she had done. "It seems, nothing." Unpleasant dream came back into her head. Fat man Sobolev waved his goddamn wreath from her subconscious. Maybe his parents ratted, but why wait so long? While Vasilisa was exhausted from conjecture, her mother took a cup with a hot drink, sat opposite. She stared at the glass surface of the table, gathering her thoughts, and then exhaled heavily. "Your dad and I are in big trouble." The phrase sounded strange. "You're not getting a divorce, are you?" The girl marveled. Her parents seemed to her an example of an ideal married couple. They sincerely loved each other, so the news stunned her. "What? No." Mom hurried to reassure her, and then, shaking her head, explained the rest. Our business has collapsed. We have to declare bankruptcy. The entire fortune will naturally be lost. But, how so? Vasilisa did not understand. Everything just now was great. Mom frowned even more. In fact, we just did not want you to worry during the graduation exams. We did not want to spoil your celebration as well, Mama said sadly with her head bowed, scratching the handle of her mug with her nail. There's been competitors in the market for a long time now, and they've displaced us. Somebody was setting us up. Important information was leaking out of the company. And then they decided to accuse your father of fraud, to set us up. I hope it doesn't go to trial. But we can't escape all the trouble. Now we are forced to go back to where we started. Vasilisa listened, but so far she did not understand how serious it was. Do they really have no money now at all? There must be some savings, right? We'll have to keep this house, too, said Mom, looking around her. We'll move to my parents' apartment. It's smaller, of course, but there's plenty of room. The main thing is to have a roof over our heads. At that moment Vasilisa realized the full scale of the disaster. They had become poor. Unthinkable. Wait, what about my studies? The girl worried. I submitted the documents to France. The girl decided she wanted to become a journalist. Her appearance, sociability and good language made Vasilisa, according to her friends, the ideal candidate for the role of a news anchor. The girl herself dreamed of becoming a foreign correspondent and covering foreign events for her country's press. Lyubimova set her sights on one of the best liberal arts universities in France. There, the undergraduate program combined international relations and journalism, and the lectures were combined with practice, which means they gave an opportunity to prove themselves. To this end, Vasilisa even learned English and French. And now what? All for nothing? Mom put her palm on her daughter's hand in a comforting gesture. She looked at her young daughter with regret. Sweetheart, unfortunately, we can't afford to study and live in the university of your choice. She did not leave hope for her daughter with her words. But there are also wonderful schools in Russia, which train and produce excellent journalists. I'm sure that with your exam results you will even be able to get a state-financed place. Mom spent a long time telling and explaining something to her daughter. She told how exactly their business had turned into a sinking ship, which was going down, and had carried away all their fortune in the hold. She explained how they were going to live their lives further on. She promised that everything would be fine, and that it would soon get better. Only Vasilisa listened to her mother with half an ear. She stared at the cold porridge, which had already become disgusting, with unseeing eyes. And her usual world fell apart like a house of cards. The important thing is that we are all healthy and together. Mom gave the final part of her fiery speech. And we can make more money. She stood up, walked around the table and kissed her daughter on the head, then walked out, taking with her the smell of expensive perfume and coffee. Thus, with an under-eaten portion of oatmeal, Vasilisa Lyubimova's new life began. Vasia yawned widely and looked at her phone, checking the time. The clock was showing 3 in the morning, and there was still plenty of work to do before the exam. Well, a sleepless night for a fifth-year student was commonplace. Lyubimova had long ago turned from a cheerful lark to a disgruntled owl. Not even an owl, but some new kind of bird, either extinct or dying of lack of sleep. It could stay awake for nights on end, or even 24 hours, and then pass out anywhere it could. The girl pulled the rest of her oatmeal cookies to herself, finishing every last crumb, and then her glass of cold coffee, finishing its contents to the bottom. After she replenished her strength, she said aloud, "So, what's next?" "Aha, a political system of democratic type, the history of emergence and development." In the student dormitory room Vasia was alone, so she boldly chatted to herself. Her friend, Serafima, was sleeping over at her boyfriend's house or somewhere else, but it was for the best. It was hard to concentrate around Simka. They were constantly distracted by something like gossip, jokes, or heart-to-heart talks. After finishing 3 more political science tickets, the girl straightened her back, kneading her bones. Deciding that she could not do without another cup of coffee, Vasia took an empty cup and went to the electric kettle. While the water was heating, Vasia glanced at herself in the wall mirror that hung there. The girl experienced a feeling of irritation that had already stuck to her. She didn't accept her appearance, But there was nothing she could do about it either. Ever since her parents had lost their fortune, the girl's appearance had changed for the worse. Extra centimeters appeared on her sides and hips. Her skin deteriorated. Her luxurious blonde hair became dull. Vasilisa gathered her hair in a ponytail or in a careless comfortable bun, forgetting about daily blow-drying, without which she never showed in the street before. What caused such a drastic change, Vasia could not say exactly. Probably the stress she experienced when they moved out of their home, saying goodbye to everything that was familiar to them, especially since the girl herself at the time said goodbye to her dreams of studying in France, which she had been breathing for the past couple of years. After this blow, a new one struck their family. The lawsuit could not be avoided. When her mother outlined the situation to Vasilisa, she didn't tell her a fraction of the problems her parents got into. Their father fell into the trap of competitors and got involved with an unscrupulous supplier. He ended up going to jail for selling counterfeit drugs. Some of the property was seized, and the father was given a room with bunk beds. So the two women in the Lyubimov family were left alone, without a shoulder to lean on. It was hard for them to accept this change. Mother and daughter were simply unfit for independent existence. However, both of them, being by nature a fighter, quickly pulled themselves together. Polina Alexandrovna shook the dust off the diploma of an accountant and got a job at a small company. True, she had to start from scratch. It turned out that skills are easy to lose when you spend time traveling or buying new fancy glasses. Vasilisa managed to get a state-funded place in a university located in St. Petersburg. The girl was even given a room in the dormitory and a scholarship. Studying was difficult, but interesting. However, the university and the everyday difficulties of independent life also contributed to Vasilisa's appearance, turning her into a girl who looked nothing like the former beauty of the school. When Vasia entered university, she had no time to put on a long makeup, and no money to go to expensive salons and grooming products, either. She did not want to apply clay from a supermarket bag to her face. She was squeamish. Then, after her freshman year, Vasilisa was forced to get a part-time job. She wanted to maintain a decent standard of living, and begging her mother for money when you are an adult student was not at all appropriate. And where would she get the money from now? The girl took on various part-time jobs, sacrificing her time off. When Lyubimova began to cram in a busy schedule of classes and work hours, the girl began to rapidly put on weight. She slept little, ate often, and all the more she broke for fast food or sweets. At one point Vasilisa caught herself thinking that she even filled her inner, mental emptiness with sweets. Here she was tired after the lecture and the seminar, and her hand reached for a donut. Here she was upset with her friend, and she was disgruntled and picks ice cream with her spoon. Vasilisa saw no difference between hunger and other feelings. For example, she could open a pack of chips out of boredom or when she was sad. And, of course, after successfully pass the test, it was a sin not to go with friends to a cafe or bar, and celebrate properly, rewarding himself and his stomach for the work done. When Vasilisa came to her senses, it was too late. Cheeks and forehead were covered with pimples, and the weight hit the spot and did not want to leave the reclaimed territory. Of course, Vasia tried to pull herself together. She went on diets, even declared strict hunger strikes, but in vain. She would lose weight, and then she would have a nervous session, or she would work as a waitress for several nights in a row, accompanying this with endless snacks. And then, bam, the weight came back again, and even more than before. And her teeth? Why did not she ever think about the amount of money she poured into private dentistry just to have a nice smile? Now, to get Vasia in the dental chair was possible only when the pain became unbearable, and the cheap pills ran out in the medicine cabinet. Soon Vasilisa admitted to herself that being beautiful when you have money for it is much easier. Now even her genes were powerless before the new reality and rhythm of life. The girl began to live in constant psychological discomfort. She did not accept her new self, but she could do nothing about it. So another 3 years passed, which did not really change anything. In the end, the young journalist simply came to terms with the fact that her life turned out to be another fairy tale. Wrong. Before, she thought she was playing the role of a princess, waiting for a prince, a castle and a joint ride on his horse toward the pink sunset. But now, looking in the mirror, She realized that she was an ugly duckling, a fairy tale in reverse. After all, once, a long time ago, Lyubimova Vasilisa was a beautiful white swan, and became a crooked reflection. Vasia jumped out of a crowded bus, almost did not leave her shoe in it. People were squeezing her from all sides, so she first stood at the bus stop, greedily gulping the fresh air, if you can call fresh air in the center of the city, of course. When she came to her senses, she adjusted her pantsuit, then Vasia checked the contents of the new tote bag. Taking another breath, Lyubimova moved toward the huge office building. The modern high-rise was built next to the city park not so long ago. Earlier on this site, it seemed, there was a cafe, and a couple of stores. This building housed the company where Vasilisa hoped to get a job. Of course, the dream of broadcasting the news of France, or flashing a smile while announcing the news, the girl had to give up. No, she tried. A couple of times she went for an interview, but there her candidacy was politely declined. Despite her excellent diction, so to speak, Vasia could spoil their picture, and makeup artists are not magicians to fix it. But Lyubimova was a diligent student, did not lose her grip and was ready to work in any suitable position, as long as they were not paid with groceries. So, 2 years after graduation, Vasilisa served as a correspondent, and then chief editor, in the image agency. The pay was not God knows what, but she got enough bread and butter. Also, the experience was interesting. She mainly wrote texts for corporate newspapers and magazines, the purpose of which was to raise the company's image to unprecedented heights. She communicated with the owners of various client companies, went to meetings, conferences, events, to cover them in a favorable light. In general, quite organically she blended into this world. In this area the girl so podnated her tala that when she saw on the website vacancy and PR manager of a large real estate agency Salt, then she immediately responded. Salt was a young but suddenly sprawling agency that dealt exclusively with luxury real estate. The girl herself had not contacted it, she simply did not have that kind of money to become a client of this firm. But Salt was always on the ear. Sometimes they participated in a sponsorship program, or charity event, or created new projects in the field of media and infobusiness. Among the firm's clients were celebrities and influential people of the country. It was a brave decision to try to join the company, but who does not risk? He will sit on pasta and sausages for a second week. So Vasilisa called the cherished number and she got an appointment for an interview. And now, at a certain hour she was at the cherished door. Vasilisa was interviewed by a glamorous blonde, tanned, with long legs, which it is unclear how they fit under the office desk. She reminded Vasia of a young Blake Lively. I remember, as a very young girl, Lyubimova watched the TV series Gossip Girl and even tried to look like a brunette Blair. So, look, she started blonde, not stopping to type and look at the computer screen. The purpose of a PR manager is simple, to communicate with the media, to keep track of what clients say and write about us. We will have to write press releases, develop and implement PR strategies. Well, I don't need to tell you about that. Lyubimova nodded with a knowing look as if she was a specialist with a century of experience behind her. Next girl began to ask Vasia basic questions, to which she adequately responded. She was given to fill in the questionnaire, where Vasilisa had to agonize over the question of whether there were people in her family with a criminal record. For some reason she wanted to lie, so as not to sully her reputation before time, especially since her father had already been released. No, Vasia was not ashamed of her father's past at all. She was sure of his innocence. But it was useless to explain to people that it wasn't his fault. He was framed. Few people believed such stories. In the end, Lyubimova decided that it is Mulvey's turn to start acquaintance with a lie, and she honestly ticked off the answer yes. Well, in the end, collecting all the papers and stapled together, the lady cheerfully announced Vasia, "We'll call you back." Finally she flashed a white-toothed smile that had not a shred of interest or sincerity. And at what period should I expect an answer, positive or negative? Vasilisa decided to insist, from which it was not so easy to fend off the duty phrase. The girl blinked her long eyelashes, and hovered for a moment. Probably, in her pretty head violated the algorithm. After all, Applicants are usually supposed to get up and go their own way. I'll send your paperwork to Human Resources and they'll make a decision. She didn't say anything specific, looking away. For now, we are recruiting applicants to select candidates and hold a competition. Vasilisa, deciding not to terrorize the girl, stood up and went to the exit. The feeling of floating, which had been pushing her back even in the morning, irrevocably evaporated. The interview left an unpleasant residue on her soul. She felt like she had failed. Besides, no one had told her about the competition. What would she have to do? Defeat the competitors in the octagon in 2 rounds? Fight a dragon? What nonsense! Vasilisa took the mirror elevator down to the lobby of the building. As soon as she stepped out of the elevator, immersed in her own thoughts, bumped into a man. "Oh, excuse me, please," Lyubimova chirped sincerely, thoughtful. "It's okay, I was inattentive too," politely smiled at the young man, rammed by her heavy body. Vasia cast a brief glance at him, involuntarily noticing that he was very handsome, tall, with a fashionable haircut, dressed in a solid dark blue suit, which did not hide, but only emphasized the difference between his broad shoulders and narrow waist. Vaska could have bet her favorite red luxury brand lipstick, for the purchase of which she had not eaten in a week, that behind all these layers of clothing is hidden a perfect athletic triangle, packed with all kinds of muscles. And what a perfume! Tart, with notes of wood. The man so hooked Vasilisa that she could not stand it, furtively glanced at him. He went into the elevator cabin, pressing the right floor. Then the girl's gaze, he raised his hand and waved, again giving her a charming smile. Vasia, unexpectedly for herself, felt embarrassed. She was completely confused under the gaze of the light brown eyes, so that she forgot to at least wave her hand in response. Lyubimova came to her senses only when the elevator doors began to close. When a flap of about 7 centimeters remained between them, Vasia sharply raised her hand, which was more like a gesture of an excellent student from the first desk, who knows the answer to the teacher's question. Blushing even more from her stupidity and reaction, Vasia turned on her heels and clucked them to the exit. "I wonder if he works here?" thoughts pondered the girl. "Although who cares? The likelihood that I will be taken is rapidly approaching 0. And guys like that are more likely to have an affair with the girl from Gossip Girl than with Fiona from Shrek. Even if I explain that I used to be a princess." A week later, Vasia had forgotten all about her attempt to get a job at the Salt. The phone was silent, and she didn't expect to hear the call. But here, too, the well-known paradox of life worked. It comes true when you don't expect it. Lyubimova's smartphone rang in the evening, as she was wheeling her grocery cart around the supermarket, torn between the racks of health foods and the counter of chips. How she wanted to sit on 2 chairs. "Hello?" The girl picked up the phone when she saw an unfamiliar number. "Hello, Vasilisa Nikolaevna?" "Yes," she confirmed, filling her lungs with air in order to give out a recitative on the subject of "I do not need the services of a bank, internet provider, mobile operator, phlebologist, or spiritologist." However, the caller had a different offer, which Vasia certainly could not refuse. "You were interviewed at the Salt agency for the position of a PR manager. Tell me, are you still interested in the job?" "Yes." "Good, you've been approved. Can you start on Monday?" Vasia almost dropped the bundle of greens from her hands. Taking it as a sign, she put the parsley back to her green brothers and picked up the phone. "Wait. What do you mean?" she murmured. "What about the contest among the candidates?" "They said not to hold it," girl explained, and by her tone it was clear that she herself did not understand why Vasia was able to sneak in without further testing. "The bosses decided on your candidacy. We are interested in working together." Vasilisa agreed with the new colleague about what time and where to come on her first day of work. After hanging up, she stood next to the vegetables for a while, in the same silent prostration as the future salad participants. "I can't believe it," Vasia muttered aloud, shaking her head and then letting out an involuntary chuckle. The grandmother next to her, who was choosing cabbage for sourdough, shook her head disapprovingly. Vasia was not walking home, but flying. Of course, she did not understand why the people in the personnel department were so interested in her resume. There was nothing particularly impressive there, except a convicted relative, Maybe they just didn't want to get involved with a girl whose father was a former sk. Vasilisa chuckled again, realizing it was time to kick the habit. Monday came. Vasilisa dressed up, applied makeup to look as good as possible on the first day of work. However, as soon as she came into the office and saw the other employees, she immediately felt how pathetic she looked in comparison to them. It was as if she was not in a real estate office, but in a modeling agency. Maria, the marketing manager, greeted Vasia, promising to show her the workplace and introduce her to all the employees. "We work on the second floor," cheerfully chirped the girl. "There is a common kitchen, but downstairs there is a cafeteria for employees. The management office is on the third floor. There's also a commercial department and a meeting room. You'll be sitting next to me in the creative department while the office is being renovated. The desks are right next to each other, so we're literally neighbors." Vasia followed the girl with her mouth open. She loved everything she saw. The building was solid, with chic and elaborate renovations. Of course, because a real estate firm had to have a proper office. "The management is excellent," the marketing manager willingly shared with the newcomer. "Constantly arrange various holidays, events on rallying. Money is paid on time. Have you been introduced to the director?" "Not yet." Vasia shook her head. "Now he is away on a business trip. He will be back at the end of the month," declared Masha. "He has been in his post for 4 years, ever since he was a student. Actually, his uncle founded the company, but he works abroad and passed everything here to his nephew, so to speak, to make a gift from the heart." Vasia followed Masha around, looking at the offices and nodding at the welcoming words of her new colleagues. She tried to soak up all the information like a sponge, but there was too much, and remembering at least a couple of names of employees was out of the question. Although Vasilisa did remember two. The blonde from the interview was chatting with a skinny, pudgy-eyed brunette, whose face in some way reminded Lubimova of Opakinja's. Yulia, HR manager, and Vera, copywriter. Maria introduced the girls. "Our new girl, Vasilisa." Lubimova smiled broadly at the girls, but they did not reciprocate, especially Vera, whose eyes immediately narrowed and scanned the plump figure of the girl. "Ah, it's you." She stretched enigmatically. "Look, we can't figure out how you got into this place, can we?" Maria's eyes widened and she shushed the woman. She just brushed it off. "Come on, Nidko, you're also interested," noted the brunette. "Do you know someone, short acquaintance, so to speak, or in one horizontal plane? Although, I can't imagine who among our superiors has such taste." "Not the brothers, that's for sure." Vasia blushed thickly at the lewd hint. "Don't listen to her," the marketing manager advised her. "She works for us for a week, and dreamed of a PR manager. Now she's pissed she didn't get it." "I don't know what you're implying. I don't know what you're implying. It's just that my resume and portfolio came in taste in the Department of Human Resources. Apparently, I don't know anyone." "I'll explain it to you." In a pseudo-helpful tone, the Pakinja's lady began. "Usually people are competing here. I myself had 3 interviews to get a job as a copywriter. And you haven't even talked to anyone except Julia. That's why we're wondering what kind of skill you need to have to be so easy to get a job. Don't be secretive, share it. I'll put it on my copyright some copyright too, and immediately send it to the president's office. Maybe they also need people." Julia giggled at her friend's joke, and Vasia pressed her lips. However, the first confusion quickly evaporated. Maybe the outer gloss Lubimova and lost, but in her soul was still the same core. She knew how to communicate with arrogant bitches, because she used to be one herself. "I think you were not hired as a PR manager, Vera, because he must have some competences, which I see you do not have." Lubimova smiled softly. "For example, the ability to build relationships with people in a positive way, to maintain composure in any situation and to smooth out conflicts. All the more so, you should have thought about the choice of words, since now I will decide what texts should be written by a copywriter." Maria snorted softly, and Vera only paled, and pressed her lips in annoyance. Yes, making an enemy on the first day of work, going is not very good. However, it was only a pitiful spoon of tar in a whole barrel of honey, which gave her a new job. So why waste energy and nerves on her? The workday began. Vasilisa smoothly merged into the work process, becoming one of the cogs of the cohesive mechanism of the agency SALT. The work was great, and so was the team. Of course, Yulia and Vera, at times, made her life less cloudless. They gave her scornful looks, tried to hit her with a stiletto, commenting on their unfortunate choice of outfit, or out loud, in the office, reading jokes about fat girls. However, as long as they didn't slip Pergu into her coffee, she didn't plan to pay attention to the two barking but not biting dogs. Before Vasia could turn around, a month had passed at her new job. She only found out about it when the phone beeped, letting her know the money had been deposited into her account. The solid figure almost made the girl jump up and down in her workplace, and blossomed like a rose in May. And yet, better than love letters, messages from the bank about the receipt of funds and the account. Right, Lyubimova, Maria commented on her satisfied face. When you have nothing in your pockets except lollipops and bus tickets, you look at all this romance a little differently, you know. The girl snorted cheerfully. Dear sirs, send me money, and I'll buy flowers here. Masha and Vasilisa became close. The girls even began to get out for joint lunches or Friday night conversations over the bar and a portion of Cosmopolitan. On one such evening Lyubimova shared with her the secret, her past, which was difficult to call rosy. Yes, of course, her fate was not horrible. People have lived worse. But when you live like that forever, and when you just get thrown down from Mount Olympus to ordinary mortals, forcing to reshape their lives, those are two big differences. Vasilisa told her new friend how in her freshman year, when her father was locked up, she was completely desperate, fell into prolonged depression, did not communicate with anyone, how much effort it took her to pull herself together again. Even to her mother she did not tell it, afraid to disappoint her and add to her extra problems and worries. Now her father has been released, we joke about it a lot, told Vasilisa, shaking the contents of the cocktail with a straw. Mom is very happy, they're trying to start over, but I don't think they'll go into business. Too badly burned. My dad's a real piece of work, though. He came up with some kind of business plan while he was in prison. Said he was gonna bet on food, farming or something. Decided homemade eggs and vegetables were our future. The cheerful Maria turned out to have a family of athletes. Her mother worked as a swim coach and her father as a soccer coach. How they gave birth to a marketer, they did not understand, but Vasia was grateful to them for that. She understood that without Masha it would have been much harder to get accustomed to the new place. Well, not as much fun. One working Monday, when Vasilisa came to work, she found herself in a beehive. Co-workers were buzzing and scurrying from place to place, like industrious bees. They had been quite productive before, but on this day it was as if they were fighting for the title of Employee of the Month. Who bit them all? Vasilisa blinked in amazement, throwing her jacket on a chair and putting a cup of coffee in front of her working laptop. I hope it's not contagious, because I get shortness of breath even when I just watch Olsia running up and down the floors in heels. Ah, today the boss is flying in. Maria waved her hand, adjusting her computer glasses. That's what they clamor in the morning. You haven't seen Yuka and Veronjzik yet. They are all dressed up as if they were going to a modeling studio. You can come to the casting in jeans and a white t-shirt, even without makeup, Vasilisa said thoughtfully, nostalgically remembering how she had such an experience 7 years and 30 kilograms ago. If I go somewhere without makeup, I'll be immediately booked for the role of the shadow of Hamlet's father or poor Yorick, even without a casting. Maria laughed. Girls more chatter, and then each went about their business. The day went quietly, except that on each side now and then came the delighted and anticipatory conversations of the Fair Sex Representatives Agency. Honestly, I first missed the boss, giggled Lubachka, adjusting the mirror skirt and sighing languidly. This lipstick does not look too provocative. Alright, you, was waving her friend off, ignoring the question about the color of the lipstick. But I heard that Olga Nikiforova, the accountant, was also interested in him, and he could be her son. She might have wanted to adopt him. They say he grew up with his uncle, without parents. Luba giggled. Vasilisa, who became an unwilling listener of the conversation, leaned over to Masha. Doesn't our boss have a family? She asked in a whisper. During the month that she had spent in Salt there had been so much new work and tasks that she had no time to worry about the boss's biography. Murmured Maria, before she took her eyes off the screen. Yes, Vladimir has no parents. The accident happened when he was in high school. As far as I know, his uncle on his mother's side took him away then. He has no children of his own, so he takes care of his nephew. Vladimir? The girl was surprised, playing with the pen in her fingers. Isn't his name Stas? I saw the documents. Stanislav. What's his name? Krasnitsky. You mixed up. Krasnitsky, former director. Masha explained. Our current director's name is Sobolev Vladimir Viktorovich. You are the same age as him. Oh, and both from Moscow. By the way, the pen fell out of the frozen fingers of a girl, but she did not immediately notice it. It rolled across the floor to Maria's feet, wearing beige pumps. The girl picked it up and handed it to her frozen friend. Lyubimova, what are you doing? She snapped her fingers in front of her face. Is everything all right? And if I write a letter of resignation right now, there's a chance that I will not cross with Vladimir Viktorovich? A shaky voice asked Vasia. Absolutely zero. Masha shook her head with conviction. Why is that? Exclamation mark. The PR manager squeaked indignantly, not wanting to give up her last straw so easily. Abronite, her colleague grinned, nodding somewhere behind the girl. Vasia would have preferred not to, but, taking in more air in her lungs, she still slowly turned around. There, surrounded by his staff, stood the same guy that Vasilia had already met at the elevator, a tall brunette whose handsome features were made for a shaving lotion commercial. It can't be, Vasilisa blurted out, unable to look away. In the man she saw in front of her, it was impossible to recognize her classmate. It was not even the fact that it had been almost 8 years. No, not at all. There was not even a shadow of that unkempt fat man with glasses. A hint that he once lived in that athletic body. Yes. His hair was dark, his eyes brown, but that was all. At that moment Vasia felt particularly acutely how much she herself had changed. Probably Sobolev himself would not be able to recognize her in Lyubimova girl, to whom he carried flowers. Vasia immediately remembered a moment for which she, at an advanced stage, had more than once had to experience a scalding sense of shame. She had told the boy in love then, that she hated people who were lazy and could not clean up. She did not like fat and ugly, and in the end what? She became someone she hated, and he became her employer. It's so sickening. I'm going to the bathroom, she muttered to Masha and quickly jumped out from the table. In the bright and clean restroom, she took long strides along the sinks. Lyubimova squinted at the mirrors, but did not dare to look at her own reflection. Oh, as if she would see something there that was not there in the morning. Thinking so, Vasia went to the wash basin and, leaning her hands on it, stared into the mirror. Her eyes were puffy, she had pimples on her forehead and chin because she had eaten a hamburger the day before, and she knew that after she ate something from fast food, little volcanoes would grow on her skin right away. But no, the love of rolls and meatballs was stronger. Vasilisa almost cried, and the mirror did not break only because it was not at fault, and still they will make her pay for the damage from her own pocket. So, Vasilisa, aloud said the girl, glaring at her reflection, either I take a month off, go on a diet and exercise, and do not get off until I do not fit in a size S, or I go, and face the harsh reality of the face, or I stay here, surrounded by toilets and be the local ghost of the toilet, like Myrtle the crybaby from Harry Potter. Of course, the girl chose the first option. No one would give her, who had worked for the agency for a miserable month, just a vacation, and she was in no hurry to become a ghost. After all, it's not the kind of career advancement you dream of when you get a job. And, after all, who is she afraid of? Yes, Vladimir will probably want to mock her, but, in fact, the guy has a right to do that. And Vasia has faced a lot worse in her life, so she can withstand all the jokes in the vein of look what you've lost. And maybe it wasn't him at all. The girl consoled herself on her way out of the bathroom. There aren't many Vladimir Sobolovs in the world. Certainly not one. However, her last hope that the meeting with the ghosts of the past could be avoided, shattered to pieces. Vasilisa, shouted the girl as she walked down the corridor. Turning around, she saw him. Vladimir. Vasilisa, it's you, warmly smiled the man. which made him even more attractive. Hello, Lyubomova's heart, an ordinary woman's heart, addicted to novels and handsome men, treacherously ticked, so much so, that Vasia could hardly restrain herself from pounding her fist on her chest, in order to put her organ in order. Hello. The girl nodded wary. We've seen each other in the elevator before. Remember? Vladimir continued. I didn't recognize you then. Sorry. Vasia stared at him expectantly, wondering if he was about to mock her. She looked at him expectantly, thinking that he was about to mock her. He would say something like, the last time I saw you, you were 100 pounds younger. That's okay. Finally, the girl continued the dialogue. I didn't recognize you either, Vladimir. She blinked, trying to remember the patronymic of the chief, but he only waved his hand. Me all just call me Vladimir. I try to build a trusting relationship with the staff, kind of like a corporate family, you know. He ruffled his hair and looked away, as if embarrassed by his own words. Do you like it here? I was surprised to see your resume. I thought you were going to work as a correspondent abroad, as planned. Vasilisa was getting dizzy. She was literally waiting for ridicule on his part. Well, at least a haughty look, but there was none. The man spoke to her like an old friend. Changed plans, evasively replied Vasia, and then, realizing Vova's words, asked again. Wait, so you took me without a competition? He shrugged his shoulders. Well, I'm actually the boss here. Vladimir grinned slyly, which made him look like a teenager. I can let you break a few rules. Well, I know you won't let me down. I remember when you were defending projects and destroying everyone in class debates. Besides, what would I be if I didn't give a classmate a chance? So how are you doing here? How are your colleagues? Is everything okay? I'll look at your work later, comment on it to help you fit in. Vasia got absolutely disgusted. From herself, she realized that it would have been easier for her if Vovka spat in her face, so at least she put a point. But he did her a good deed, got her a job. And now he's standing there, worried. Vovka was kind, open and responsive even then, and she mocked him so rudely, humiliated him in front of everyone. The girl, accustomed to easily hide emotions, could barely contain herself from shamefully crying. She looked away from the face of the brunette. Excuse me, Vladimir, I urgently need to make a business call. I'll prepare a report on the work done. Okay, she muttered and, once again apologizing, quickly fled to her workplace. From then on, the fun days began for Vasilisa. She avoided her boss as much as she could, as if she were a negligent employee. Vladimir, on the other hand, was too friendly. Vasia, due to her character, tried to find a catch in it and kept her nose to the wind. Well, he couldn't be that kind. Maybe he had set her up on purpose, lured her into a trap so he could let her down and set her up somehow, like sending her to jail, like her father. When she voiced this idea to Maria over lunch, she nearly choked on her soup. You need to read less detective stories, or you'll see conspiracy theories everywhere, she scolded her friend. And anyway, what are you accusing Sobolev of? That he is kind? Vova is good to everybody, as long as we do our work properly. And what does that mean? That he's marinating us to sacrifice to someone, right? Well, you didn't make fun of him at school, so you bullied him as a kid. So what? Not all people are vindictive bastards. Vaska, calm down and just work. In addition to her worries, Vasia's conscience gnawed at her. It ate her up, but, unfortunately, it didn't bite off the extra pounds. The girl even remembered lines from the letter. He said he felt bad. After all, the boy then moved to Moscow with his uncle, after the death of his parents. And she had rolled over his feelings. She kept thinking that maybe she should apologize, except that she knew that her apologies have already had an expiration date. And Vladimir, as if they were not needed. The situation was even worse because all the single girls in the office seemed to be in love with their boss. Maybe there was no love there, but the desire to be in bed, or at least on the couch in the office, certainly crept up on most of them. It didn't escape these ladies that their boss was paying attention to a fat girl, and one day he asked in front of everyone if she wanted to go to lunch, despite the fact that the dumbfounded Lyubimova refused, citing the workload. After this scene she had it even worse. One workday she came to work and realized that all the attention was on her, By lunchtime she could not stand the whispers behind her back. Turning to Masha, she averted her eyes. "Listen, I didn't mean to upset you. I don't see the problem. But, well, someone found your old photos, so they are all talking about how you have changed. They talk all kinds of nonsense. And about your father, too. They say a lot of crazy things, but do not take it to heart, okay? They will flick their tongues and calm down." Vasia nodded weakly, in response to her friend's consolation. She did not respond to ridicule and give gossipers more reason to mock. However, the gossip did not stop when, one Friday night, Vasia did not go to the carpet to a former classmate. She was going to bring the promised report on her work, so she stood at the door, gathering her courage. Just no sooner had she come in, than she heard Vladimir's angry voice, to which she was not used to. "Are you children?" he was asking someone. "Do you understand that this is psychological harassment?" Vasia turned aloud, even to the door, making sure in advance that no one in the corridor, in my company, has no place for rumors and gossip. Boiling with discontent, the boss continued to ravage. "If you have so much time to discuss your colleagues, it means there's not enough work, right?" The people he condemned muttered something in their defense. "Next time you won't get away with reprimand. Go away. And don't forget to apologize to Lyubimova." Vasia ran away from the door, hiding behind a corner. She blushed all over. Did he stand up for her? No, of course. The task of a good boss is not to allow bullying colleagues. But still. Another month passed. Vladimir was still as charming and caring. He insisted on sick leave when Vaya had a cold, and also sent her a welcome home present. He was courteous and generous. Vasilisa could not shake off the sense of common joy that this man evoked in her soul. Of course, she had no right to such emotions. The chance was missed. But there is no harm in dreaming, right? Sobolev, meanwhile, increasingly trusted the PR manager. The man allowed her to implement the most daring image events and promotions, approving the budget for their implementation, sincerely believing that the efforts will pay off. Vasia sometimes felt that even her parents did not believe in her as much as Vladimir. Vasilisa herself did not notice how she became close to Vova. "Oh, Vasia, it's good that you're there." The man rejoiced as he flew out of the elevator with his tie on his back. "Look, here is a file with documents. It should be handed over to Sergei Zmailov. Don't let it out of your hands until then. Okay? It's very important. I have to leave. I'm late for a meeting with the developers." Sobolev was nursing a big project, a contract with developers who were about to announce the beginning of construction of an entire village of luxury real estate for the select few. It was a goldmine for realtors, and Vladimir, who turned out to be a keen businessman, did not intend to miss it. Only a select few knew about it. "Of course, will be done, in army style," the girl reported. And then she gave Vladimir a picky look. "And that's how you plan to impress them, isn't it? Let me fix it." She left the table, returning the tie to its normal appearance. The girl was not even aware of her actions. Only when she nodded satisfied and looked up at Vladimir, she realized how close they stood and how much she had allowed herself. Good luck," mumbled Vasia, ducking back behind the table. The man waved his hand and disappeared again. "He spoils you." Maria nodded at the folder with a sly smile. "He trusts the most precious things." "It's not that valuable a folder," the brunette said absent-mindedly. "And I'm talking about his heart, maybe." Maria winked at him. "You should have seen the way he looked while you were trying to strangle him with his tie." "Oh, don't be silly." Vasia was embarrassed, dulling her gaze. Her heart beat faster again. "How about that?" Vova tamed her with his kindness, as if he fed her from his hand. She was all blurred out. A phone call interrupted her thoughts. Her mother called and Vasia stepped aside to have a few words with her parents without arousing her ears. 2 more weeks passed like that, and then a big iceberg appeared in front of the ship called Salt Agency. "We have a rat that has almost brought us a lot of problems," Vladimir announced at a regular meeting, where he invited many of his colleagues. "And some of it I still have to clean up." "And what happened?" asked the man Oleg, the financial director. "Our contract with the developer of the luxury village is hanging by a thread," he explained, "because our competitors interfered. They not only interfered, they had all of our developments, documents, proposals, potential client bases. Our clients, with whom we were negotiating. The news, although it was not for public discussion, quickly spread around the corridors of the office building. It reached the creative department, and the accusations, to Vasia's amazement, fell on her head. "Would you confess, Lyubimova, or are you waiting to be invited to the trial?" Vera asked, filing her nails at her workplace. "Wait, you want to accuse me of leaking corporate records?" Exclamation mark. In astonishment Vasilisa even raised her voice. "What do you wonder?" "As far as I know, before Vasilisa Nikolaevna we had no such problems," Vera remarked. "And you can get access to these documents. For example, I, an ordinary copywriter, or Yuka over there, can't." "I can, but I don't need it." "I can, but I don't need it," the woman insisted. "Yes, I've never seen any in the eyes," began a girl, but stopped. She turned pale, remembering that it was she who Vova had given the ill-starred folder. Could it be that it was in the hands of the competition? Exclamation mark. "Why are you silent, Lyubimova?" continued to hiss Vera. "Conscience awakened, does not allow you to talk?" Vasia understood that Vera was just mocking. She had no real proof, but it was a terrible picture. "Didn't Vladimir Nikolaevich give you a folder?" Lubotshka asked thoughtfully, her lips painted acid red. "Me." The girl was even more confused, blushing thickly. "Yeah, so there was a folder, right? I knew it." "Vovika had a snake on our chest." "Happened." Vera, shut up. Vasia couldn't help it. "Stop it." A man's voice came out. When they all looked in Vladimir's direction, the man shot them a disgruntled look. The man asked, but there was no answer. Then he looked at Vasilisa and nodded toward the exit. "Lyubimova, my office." The girl stood up and on cotton legs followed her boss. She managed to notice Vera's winning smile. As soon as the door closed behind her, she blurted out, "I swear it's not me. I would never." The man waved a hand, urging her to be quiet. Then, leaning his hips on his desk, he rubbed his face with his hands tiredly. He rarely smiled these days, being completely absorbed in his work and the solution of sudden problems. He looked unaccustomedly gloomy and tired. And in that moment, as Vasia looked at Sobolev, she realized how much he had penetrated her heart. But she was ashamed to love Vova. She hadn't accepted him before, so what right did she have to do it now? When he's handsome, successful, it's easy to love him. "I know it's not you, Vasia," he began. "Your friend, Maria." "You're close, right?" "Masha could not," Vasia exclaimed hotly, taking a step forward. "She is a very good person." It seemed to Vasia that she would defend Masha's honor even more than her own. "That's what I think, too. Good people sometimes do bad things. It remains to understand the motives." Vasilisa wanted to object again, but the man just showed her the surveillance tape. It showed how Masha took a folder from her desk and took pictures of documents, while Vasia was chatting with her mother on the phone. "Will you fire her?" whispered the girl in horror. "I don't know yet." Vova shook his head. "She is a good employee. We have worked together for 3 years. I do not understand what happened. I want to listen to her first." Vasilisa looked at the man in shock. His kindness conquered her and dazzled her. And Vova, meanwhile, smiled tiredly, openly. "I decided here, with you to consult." And then, as it turned out, there was no one else to trust. A sharp needle pricked Vasia's heart. "And you can trust me?" she whispered through a lump in her throat. "Sure. We've known each other since high school." "Of course we know each other from high school," he sniggered. "Sorry." Vasia breathed out what she had been thinking for so long. "Please forgive me. I was so stupid, arrogant, so hurt you." Vova smiled wider. "Come on, Lyubimova, how much water has passed? We were both kids. And then, you were right. I really let myself go. After my parents died, even my uncle scolded me. And then, when I was at uni, I got back on my feet. So you gave me a magic kick in the right direction." Vasia realized she was crying only when she sniffed her nose. "Oh, don't get all damp. I immediately get lost when beautiful girls cry." Vladimir's fidgeting. "You're kidding, right?" Vasilisa was offended. "I'm not beautiful for a long time." The girl caught her breath when her cheeks were touched by the man's hands, forcing her to look up. "You're wrong." He looked into her blue, tear-wet eyes with a smile. "You've always been beautiful. Beauty is in the soul." Vladimir's fingers gently removed the tears from her face. "Do you remember what I said to you then?" I thought that you were beautiful not only in appearance, but also in soul. I still think so, Vasilisa. Softly he said her name. I fell in love then, not with the first beauty of the school, but with a girl who destroyed her opponents during verbal duels and debates. The girl who had her own opinion on every issue and always defended it. The girl who almost killed the referee who tried to sue our soccer team. The girl who spoke so beautifully in French about her dream of becoming a journalist. I admired you, Vaska. And I don't think anything has changed. Vasia listened to Vladimir's words like fascinated and was afraid to believe them. And even more, she was afraid to blink. What if it all disappeared, turned out to be a dream, but this time not a nightmare? And in the next second, Vasia thought that she wasn't an ugly duckling after all. She was a real princess. Why else would she be kissed by Prince Charming? Thank you so much. Maria thanked Vova again. I'll get to work when I get back. I'll be waiting, and I still advise you to look for legal ways to earn money next time. Vova shook his head, trying to look serious. But a confused smile appeared on his lips when Masha hugged him. Out of sheer emotion, he glanced at Vasia, but she only giggled at his awkwardness. Vasilisa and Vladimir arrived at the airport to see Masha off. The girl was urgently taking her mother abroad for treatment. The woman found herself in a difficult situation. She got an injury of the spine at work. It was necessary to treat it in Germany. It was expensive. That's why Maria decided to go against her conscience. Her competitors chose her, deciding that a girl with such monetary difficulties would be a weak link. They did not misjudge her. What they did not know was that even the securities would not help them beat Sobolev, and that he would forgive his employee and even help her. Masha also hugged her friend. Take care here. Take care of such a treasure, Maria whispered in Vasia's ear at the end. When she left for the plane, Vasilisa hugged her beloved man. Well, what? It's time to go home? Vladimir asked, kissing her on the top of her head. Home. She nodded. They moved in together almost immediately, having decided that there was no point in waiting. Vladimir seemed to be able to have the wedding right away. We'd just have to invite all my classmates. I promised Anton that I would invite everyone to our wedding, he said seriously. Vasilisa only laughed. She and Vova were so comfortable, as if they had lived together all their lives. She also changed her appearance, only not from diets, but from the love that filled her. The girl even lost 2 pounds. Maybe she will lose some more, but maybe she won't. After all, Vasian understood the main thing. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and no makeup can make a face as beautiful as a loving look and a sincere smile.